So we've got our sheet here, and I'm actually going to do a couple of things in the video. We're going to talk about the sheet we had in class, and we're also going to talk a little bit about how it's different from your actual project. So this is the project template we had. In class, the first place we had to start was by making a copy, and I'm going to do that here as well, so that this copy of it from my Open Math actually stays blank. To make a copy of a sheet, you go to File up here and go down to Make a Copy right there. Okay. In fact, I need to zoom in a little bit there. There we go. One more. Okay. So I'm going to make a copy. And I'm just going to leave this title here. It's being saved to my drive. I'm going to show you how you can retrieve that later. And I'm just going to push, actually I'm going to make this, put an A in front because that'll be easier for me to find it later. But you don't need to make that change. So we've got now a fresh copy for us to use in our process. In class on the activity, we had specific numbers that we found from, what was the name of the activity? The practice for Big Idea 2, practice using Google Sheets activity. And I unfortunately don't have that right in front of me, so I'm going to make up some numbers. So these are all made up. They won't show up on any of your activities. I'll remind you guys that they're made up. Let's say for car A that our repeating cost while paying off the car is, let's say it's $650. It's pretty straightforward, I guess. And that the cost of fueling the car is going to be, let's say that is $235. For car B, let's make that $460, and let's make that $320. And then let's say this is $540 and $130 or something like that. I just made up numbers there. Okay. And I am going to talk about on your actual project how this is going to be a little bit different. So here we're just dealing with the repeating cost, but on your project you've got this one-time cost row here that we're going to have to deal with. So I'll talk about that as well. The first thing we have to do on this one, though, and what we're going to have to do on our project to set up a table, is we have to put in the months. Now, you could go up 1 month at a time. That is something you could do. So it's 0, 1, 2 months. To go out a long period of time to get how the cost of the car is changing, or the total amount you've paid for the car is changing, we would be dragging this down for a long time. So I suggested in class that we go up by groups of 6 or 12 months. So it'd be either 0, 6, 12, or it'd be 0, 12, 24. I'm going to stick with 6 and 12 because I know that's what we did in class, and I feel like it tells me a little bit more. So then once I have that pattern, I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to copy it. So highlighting is clicking from the center of a cell and dragging. That's highlighting or choosing. Choosing cells is clicking from the center. You can choose multiple cells by clicking and dragging. So that's how we choose a cell. Copying a cell then, or copying a pattern of any kind, once you've chosen it, you are going to highlight the corner. So I would drag this down, and I'm going to drag it down to... that's further than I need it to go. We'll go there. We'll go to 180 months. So now finding the cost of car A. The cost of car A is always going to be, and we did this a little bit differently in class, so I'm going to do it a specific way here. We did it differently in class, but either way is fine. The cost of car A, one way of doing that is to say, well, I want to take the cost or the amount I pay for the car while I'm paying it off. That's $650, okay? And I want to multiply that by the number of months. Right here, the number of months is 0, okay? And I would add that to the cost of, oh, sorry, I take that back. I don't need to add that to anything. I'm just going to leave it like that. Because that's the cost while paying off the car, and then I've got the total amount there that I need to have paid. So there we go. Okay. So once I have that formula, I can drag it down. But there's a small problem with how I've dragged that down, and it's that I've moved my repeating cost. So what I actually have to do in my original formula is to maintain the repeating cost as being the same value. I need to put dollar signs in front of both the column letter and the row number. So the column letter was D up here, and the row number is 4 over here. So you're really just identifying that and saying, I always want this to show up in my formula. The C9 can change when I drag. So we'll drag that again. And we can double check. I did still have 650, and I do have this being multiplied by 6 months. Okay. So I'm going to drag this down to 60 months. And I'm dragging it down to 60 months because that's where I'm going to have the car paid off. So I'm just going to highlight that row since that's where it's paid off. Okay. And I'll go ahead and do that for the cost of B and the cost of C. So I've got this equal to my repeating cost while paying off the car times the number of months. I want to keep the cost of paying off the car constant, so I put in a dollar sign in front of the column letter and in front of the row number. I changed something here. Oh, I changed this cell. I don't want that. I don't want A8. I want C9. There we go. And now I can drag this down as well, and I can double check one of them to make sure that I've got the right amount. Yes, it's drawing the 460, which is the repeating cost, and the 6 months. So that works. I did lose my color, though, when I did that. Okay, and then C. Repeating cost, or, yeah, oh, don't do that. Then dollar signs up here. And then multiply this times my number of months. And drag this down. And recolor my 6 months. Okay. So there I have my payments, or my total amounts that I'm going to have paid off while I'm paying off the car. Then I'm going to do the cost after I paid off the car. So I've paid this amount, right? I've paid the $39,000. But I've also paid 6 months worth of $235 on its own, which is a little bit strange. So I'm going to take the $39,000 and add it to my amount that I pay for fuel times 6 months. Okay, which is a little bit strange here. Okay. That amount that I pay for fuel, I want that to stay constant, so I'm going to put dollar signs in front of the E and in front of the 4. And that should now drag down appropriately. Because now what's going to happen is when I double click on this, it's choosing my cell right above it and adding on 6 more months of fuel. Because every time I go down, I'm really just adding on an additional 6 months of fuel. So the amount that I'm adding it to is always going to change, but I'm always going to be adding on 6 months of fuel. So I've got that in there. And now I can drag this down to the bottom. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing here. So it's going to equal the previous value plus my, and when I scroll you'll see that the cell moves with you. So plus my fuel costs times 6. Okay. So there's that. And, oh, I need to lock E5. There. Okay. And now I should be able to drag this down. And then lastly here, I've got my previous value plus, scroll up, E6 times 6. I'm going to go over another way to do this in just a minute. Okay. And I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to drag it all the way down. And so now I have my total amount up to 180 months. To get a graph, you highlight all of the cells. So again, clicking from the center, dragging it down. I'm not copying anything, I'm just selecting everything. And then I need to insert a graph. So you can insert a chart with this button over here, see Insert Chart, or over in the Insert menu, there's that same icon, the chart icon, right here. So I'm going to click on that, and this is my graph right here. Okay. So let's talk about, we didn't get a chance to do this in class, let's talk about making the graph look the way we want it to. So I'm going to go to customization right here. And you can leave the title the same, or you might want to change it. So maybe I'm going to change it to comparing, try that again, comparing the cost of 3 cars, or 3 automobiles, or 3 vehicles, something like that. The legend, the title, you can also change whether or not it's bold or italicized. You can put all those things in there. You can change the size, make it bigger. I'm going to leave it. You can change the color, red. Make it red. These are all things that you can do with your graph here. You can also change the font. The font here changes everything, the axes, how they're labeled, the legend, and the title. So you can do that as well if you wanted to. There we go. I changed the font. The legend is this thing over here. It tells you what each of the lines mean. It's pretty useful to have for this graph, so I'm going to leave it there. Part of the reason why it shows up is because we chose the titles of those columns that it had the label cost of A, cost of B, cost of C. Just like this has the word months on it because it actually, we grabbed that information when we selected our data. Okay. You can choose to change the legend as well, make it bigger, make it bold, make it italicized, etc. You can change the background color of your graph. That does not work very well, so I'm not going to leave it as that color. In fact, I'm going to just change it back to white. While white is boring, it also is the best contrast with black, so that does tend to work well in terms of color. Let's see, we're going to skip those features. We don't need those. The axis. So this is the horizontal axis here. It's titled months. We can change the size, the color, etc. You can change the labels of the axes, size, color, whether or not it's italicized, etc. Slant labels is actually putting the numbers on a slant, which is fine if you would like to do that. I just leave it on auto typically, and it doesn't turn them. You can also change where the minimum and maximum value for this axis are if you wanted it to be closer in or further out or something like that. And then you can also change how many grid lines there are. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 lined up like that are attached to the horizontal axis. So I could actually make this like 8 grid lines instead. It goes up by 20s then if I wanted to. Or I could do 10. 10 apparently is the same, but you can put in minor grid lines as well. It's basically telling you how many grid lines there will be, so I could put in 3 grid lines on here. For 20, I think that means that this is 10, so 5, 10, 15, 20 here, 25, 30, 35, 40. So you can do that for each of the axes. So if I go back up here, change this to left vertical axis, I can put in a title, total amount spent on car. That shows up when I push enter or when I just click away from it. And then I can also do the number of grid lines and have that be different as well. So I could go up by, have 10 grid lines, which is going up by 8,000 at a time. I could add in grid line in between. Makes it a little bit easier to see the comparison of where the costs are, right? Like this is at about 32,000, which you can see when you hover over it, it highlights the points, but okay, so there's that. I'm going to change my title back to actually being a black font instead. So that's my graph. Once I'm done fiddling with all of the different aspects up here. The lines, you can change the line thickness, make them bigger or make them smaller. I like 2. I think it's pretty good. There are points on these lines. It's hard to see them, but you could put different points on there. I guess there weren't points on there before. None. There we go. So you can change the point size back to none if you change that. Left axis, get that. So all of this looks good. So we're going to leave this as is, and we can insert this graph. Scroll up here, and we can just move this graph kind of over to the side so that we can see it. And the neat thing about it is you can actually see where the paying process changed here, right? This is where 60 months is, or 5 years. That's when you've paid off the car. So it's steeper while you're paying it off because you're paying more each month. And then it becomes less steep later because you're only paying the fuel cost. So that is the project. You can do the formula a little bit differently. I'm going to show you doing the formula a little bit differently on the actual project. You're welcome to make these changes. Okay. So on the actual project, you put in the vehicle, make, and model, and then we have one-time cost, which if you remember from your the activity that has the 3 different steps, you found a down payment of 10%. That's really what this is. This is your 10% down payment. And actually, I'm going to make a copy of this first. There we go. So this is our 10% down payment. And so we can see this. That's called text wrapping. We can move that there. So this is the 10% down payment. So let's say on your car the 10% down payment was $6,000. And your repeating monthly cost while paying down the loan, let's say that was $890. And then after it was $260. Okay. This repeating monthly cost while paying down the loan, in the practice, we consider this to be both the cost of fuel and the monthly payments on the loan for your car. I might actually say it's a little bit easier if you just make it the monthly payments on the loan. Okay. Which if this was $890 and this was $260, if we take out the $260, we should be left with, I'm going to do a calculation over here. $890 minus, not equals, minus $260. We get $630. So I'm going to change this to $630. So now it's just the monthly payments on the loan for the car, and this is just the monthly fuel payments now. And you're welcome to make these changes to yours as well if you would like to, although there is a lot of great ways of setting this up. So once you have this initial amount, when you're setting up your formula, we have something a little bit different. So I'm actually going to go down here, and let's say that we had a 5-year loan. Okay, 5-year loan would be 60 months. So there were 60 months that we were actually going to be paying off this loan. The total cost then becomes equal to our one-time cost of $6,000 plus our monthly payment times the number of months plus our fuel cost times the number of months. So we end up with something actually a little bit easier when we get down to our table. And I'm going to show you why that's a little bit easier when we get down to our table. But we would end up finding the right amount that we would spend total on the car up to this point. So let's go down here to my table. Let's do the 6, 12 months here. We'll drag that pattern down. We'll move the finger down to 60 months. That's where it's going to be paid off. You could also color that. That'd be fine. Okay. And so let's do the gas-powered car. Okay. So we're going to have that it's equal to the one-time payment. I want that to stay the same. I don't want the one-time payment to change. So I'm going to put in the dollar signs to hold that. To the one-time payment, I'm going to add my monthly payment. Again, I don't want my monthly payment on the loan to change, so I'm going to put in dollar signs around that. But the monthly payment gets multiplied times the number of months. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the cost for fuel. So there's my cost for fuel up here, and I want that to be times the number of months. And I'm going to put in my dollar signs here. So I'm essentially adding up all the pieces. I'm adding up the one-time payment, the loan payment, and the fuel payments. This is just another way to do it. We can certainly do it other ways as well, but this is another way of setting it up. Okay. And of course, after 0 months, I would only have paid $6,000. If I drag this down to 60 months, there I get my same number that I had up here. So I should be getting the same value for 60 months here. Okay. This then becomes a little bit easier to get 66 months. So I'm going to drag this down one more cell. But the problem with this is that I'm still making monthly payments in this formula. But I know I'm not actually still making monthly payments. I'm actually only making the fuel payments now. I'm not making monthly payments anymore. So I should be able to take that out, but I'm actually not. I think what I need to do there instead is I need to add in the amount I've paid at 60 months here. So I'm adding that in instead. So we're going to take this out because we don't want to make the monthly payments anymore. We just want to have the amount that I've paid up to this point, which is the one that's in 60. So we're going to put in dollar signs to hold that constant. And now I should have, that seems like way too much. What happened? Hold on. Sorry about this.